Oh, g'day. Or should I say, greetings, baby earthlings. No, I shouldn't say that. But whatever it was I was going to say, baby earthlings, that's pretty much what we are. We are all earthlings living on. My fucking hair's never perfect. Living on this infinite flat plane called Earth. The flatness, just forget about it. It's just infinite. Bumpy, lumpy, mountains, valleys, the whole works. The oceans surrounding us just prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's contained in a flat environment. If you haven't got that by now. Now, what's pissing me off hugely just lately, and I seem to be getting pissed off a little bit too easily lately, but that's probably because I've got a very demanding job that drains the energy out of me. And so my temper sort of has become a little shorter than what it might have once been. And the thing that's really, really getting my goat lately is people who are insisting upon the moon producing its own light. Producing its own light. Okay. Freaking fluorescent bulb up there. It doesn't produce its own light. It's the electricity being pumped into it through wires, exciting the gases within inside of it to make light. That works. What's the moon plugged into? Now, while I was out there tonight looking at the moon and the stars, astute observers would realise, what the fuck's he talking about? There's no moon out tonight. Dead right. There is no moon because it's the new moon. In fact, there was the new moon at about 5:46 a.m. this morning, which means it's not new anymore, it is now waxing. So in the morning, not so long after the sun comes up, pretty much, because it would have set at the same time. But soon after the sun comes up, in fact, I would say at least an hour, since it was new at about 6 a.m. this morning, what you're going to see, well, you won't see anything actually, because it'll be such a tiny sliver of moon and the sunlight will be so bright around it, you probably won't see anything for a few more days until the moon is sufficiently far enough behind on its schedule to create the phases that you'll start to see the crescent appearing in the daytime, and it will appear all day long because that's what the moon cycles do. The moon is illuminated by the sun. End of story. If you have a better explanation for how the moon produces light, see, this is what got me on my walk tonight, and this one may even froth up, so bear with me. I've worked out my I've almost worked out my carbonation ratios perfectly. But yeah, baby. There we go. Right. One of the modern day founding fathers, if that's not such a contradiction in terms if ever I've heard one, of the flat earth, and anybody that says flat earth society, go kick yourself in the butt twice. Do backflips and keep kicking yourself in the butt. Flat earth society, nobody that believes in the flat earth has anything to do with that idiot. They got a good name really early on. But this Flat Earth Research Society, I guess, is this Eric Dubé guy. And he brought out this 200 proofs that the Earth is not a spinning globe. And 99.9% of them, brilliant stuff. Excellent work. Well done, Eric. You've done some great research. You've produced some really good evidence. But what you did really wrong and totally fucked up, and you're making idiots out of so many people today, so many flat earthers, is that you mentioned that the moon produces a a decaying light, a cool light, and produces its own light. Anything that goes down that path, that's where you lose me, because trust me, I've known about flat earth for a couple of decades, not just a couple of years like most of you. I didn't know I knew flat earth at the time. I knew something was wrong, and I've always been looking at the moon and trying to understand it. And the moon does not produce light. Simple as that. I've explained it in a lot of other videos, but in a nutshell, here's how it works. Get yourself a strong spotlight, go out into a desert region where it's perfectly flat, but you've got one object that stands up like a massive rock or a termite hill or whatever you can find. Some sort of thing that separates itself from the rest of the desert. It stands above. Shine your spotlight at it. Now, go hundreds of meters away to another direction where you can no longer see the spotlight, but you can still see the object lit by your spotlight. And now, that's a comparison to the moon. This object is a rock. And because you can still see it, you're going to say to yourself, it is reflecting light. Technically, yeah, it's reflecting it, but it's not a great word. Reflections usually means mirror or surface of water or something really shiny. That's a reflection. But everything you see is a reflection of light when you get down to the nitty gritty. But reflection's a bad word. It's being illuminated by it. And so what you see in your eyeballs is the reflection. Definitely not a good word, but that's what you see. So you see this rock. Now, why the fuck would you assume that the image of that rock that you are seeing reflecting is going to produce heat? Were you feeling it hundreds and hundreds of meters away, well away from the light source that's illuminating it? The light source itself might be producing quite a lot of heat. It may even produce enough to heat the rock slightly if you were to touch it. Might. But what you're going to feel hundreds and hundreds of meters away, what that light might be doing is, exciting some of the air molecules and so forth that are in the path of that reflection, and ones that aren't in the path of that reflection won't get so excited, so they're just going to stay normal. But the ones that are getting excited, they might produce a little bit of heat, a tiny amount. And what happens when you produce a little bit of heat in a cool environment, especially when it's dark and nighttime, is that those excited molecules and heat rises. That's a natural phenomenon of heat. In fact, you'll notice it particularly so if you lit a fire in a similar environment, somewhere outdoors on a really cold winter's night. If you light a fire, when you go and stand by that fire, you're going to be really, really warm. But you only have to go a few meters away from it and you're feeling really bloody cold. And that's because what's happening as a result of the fire sucking up the heat and shooting it straight up like a basically outdoor chimney, uncontrolled chimney, is it's drawing in all this cooled oxygen more rapidly, making the whole outside area more cool than what it would be had you not lit the fire in the first place. But because you've lit the fire, now you have to go and stand by it to try and keep warm. And that's, an exaggerated effect of what happens when moonlight or reflected light off a rock in the desert is shining upon a really cool area way, 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 way away from it. That tiny amount of heat that it's producing is creating that evaporative effect. It's a completely opposite effect of what happens in daytime. Because what you see in daytime is the sun's light creates so much heat that it heats up those air molecules faster than they can rise to make it cooler underneath. And it heats basically the surface of everything. And so because the surface is also hot, you feel warm through the day. And I'm quite in tune with this because now that we're coming into winter, very much into winter, and I've got a finely tuned body, flesh and blood and nerves and all that sort of thing system sitting on the beach and being very much aware of how much I'd like to soak in as much sunlight as I can through the day, how rapidly it cools down in wintertime especially, when the sun isn't there, when it's disappearing really fast towards the northeast. In fact, give me a second to think about this because I've got a lot to say about this particular topic. I'm going to try and do it without pausing. Even though this is a pause, I want to keep this a coherent thing so you're not thinking I'm going away for half an hour and come back. Is the moment the sun goes behind the trees or whatever in the distance, is I get instantly cold and have to wrap a blanket around me. But the moment I can step into the slightest amount of sunlight, I feel warmth. And can take the blanket back off and go, that's great. But it only lasts for a few minutes either side of the sunset. And so the sun is obviously a very powerful form of light and heat. But at the same time, what it is doing is also creating the evaporative effect. So the heat is still rising. That's why we get clouds, it heats the water up, the water vapors rise. Everything is an effect of the heat of the sun in the daytime. Now in the nighttime, it's much cooler. There is no sunlight causing that. So what you've got then is a fairly stagnant, slow release of the heat. Most say, warm bodies such as rocks and roads and other solid objects retain their heat fairly well. And so when you put another light source onto them and excite the light sources above them, then that is pretty much like that fire in the desert or fire in the cool thing. You're creating a artificial environment, so to speak, which is drawing the heat up more rapidly. And if you've got something blocking that from coming, such as, say, a tree, so you've got the shade of the tree from the moonlight, it's going to be warmer in the shade because, if you've got those laser thermometers, simply because the moonlight heating up the part of the landscape that isn't obstructed by the shade is drawing the heat out faster. It's very logical if you apply a bit of logic 101 to the equation. Now I will pause for a sec because there's something else I'm going to talk about. Okie doke. So, only took me a hair and a freckle to remember what it was. And what really, really gets my goat is I'm a flat earther and I associate with flat earthers in general. Oh, geez. There's two aspects to this. I'll start with the first one. It's the simple one. I hope I get back to the second. Is that my fellow flat earthers often produce a bunch of bullshit. And so I like to try and help out as best as I can and try and set them straight and help them out. Especially when I see them making accusations such as, you must be the biggest retard if you still think the moon is illuminated by the sun. This is one of these ones that came up today and I was like, oh God. I scroll past so much shit. But when I see shit like that, I'm thinking, no, this guy needs a little bit of education. I'll help him out as best I can. And I made a fairly lengthy rant. It took a few minutes out of my life, I suppose, but the bit that really gets my goat is that the fucker deleted my response. And he still tried to, keep the conversation going on another response on the same post. And I'm like, no. When I go out of my way to respond and give some education, some knowledge to you on your Facebook page, and I don't know you from fucking anybody, I wouldn't know who you are. All I know is that if you're on my friends list, you probably deserve to be there. But just because we have flat earth in common doesn't mean that I agree with everything you're going to say. Not for 1 second. No, I will challenge everything because I challenge myself. I challenge all my beliefs. And I will definitely challenge your beliefs. And if we can come then to a conclusion, fine. We can agree to disagree, fine. I'm happy with that as well. I got no problem with that. I go to bed every night happy to disagree with myself. I've got a million conflicting thoughts in my head. But I entertain every single one of them because that's what you do. So when you come across as this arrogant, I know it all, this is how it is, you're an idiot if you disagree with me. That's a challenge to me. So yeah, I will try and take up that challenge, whether or not I agree with it myself. I will just do it. Just because the internet is fucking boring. Yeah, I'm bored with every single debate except the flat earth. The flat earth is the thing that keeps me entertained because it's an intellectual challenge. And so if I go and post on your page a fairly lengthy response and you just delete it, you're the sort of fucking idiot I will just block. Because here we go, that's what it's coming to. Fucking idiots. Back when 9/11 first occurred, the whole world was in shock. Didn't take me long. First day, I'm in shock. Second day, I'm like, seems a little bit odd that this could happen. Third day, I had no doubt it was an inside job. Absolutely 100% inside job. And I spent years, well, months, weeks first, days, weeks, months, at following, saying how much of an inside job that must be. And I copped all kinds of shit. But after a while, a few years down the track, it became common knowledge that it's an inside job. And then you have to accept all these other fucking wacko theories and people that think because they've learnt one truth, they know them all. And that's what's happening with the flat earth movement, is that, yeah, we all went down a bit of a rabbit hole to discover the truth of the flat earth, but that doesn't mean that every single other fucking thing that people are saying is also a truth, part of this truth movement. If you want to know the truth, you question everything. You don't just say, yeah, well, somebody says that the moon produces a cooling light, therefore anybody that doesn't believe that also mustn't be a flat earther and they must be retards. You are stupid. Fucking stupid to even entertain that. Sorry. No, entertain it. Entertain it, but question it and look into it and realise what's really going on with the moon and the sun. It all makes perfect sense on the flat earth that the moon is reflecting the sunlight because they're not on this perfect circle above us. You look at these diagrams that show you this perfect flat earth. None of it's perfect. It's still a natural phenomenon, and the moon, be it natural or be it not, is still only a sphere of some sort illuminated by a sun, which is at least twice the distance away from us as the moon is. That's an easily provable fact for anybody that cares to investigate it. So to think that the moon produces its own light, yet still fits perfectly in this pattern of a monthly cycle where the sun is illuminating it, it just really disappoints me. Really disappoints me that so many intelligent people that have grasped the concept of flat earth can't grasp that. And this is what the same thing happened with the 9/11 movement, is that eventually once the majority started to understand it, they started bringing in all these fucking wacko theories to the point where I can't stand 9/11 anymore, because even though these people have an inkling of the truth, they're just adding so much bullshit to it. You don't need to add bullshit to the truth. The truth is plain and simple, in plain sight. You do not need to elaborate. Accept things for what they are. Most people, when they first hear about the flat earth, they start questioning, well, all of physics must be wrong, and all of history and all of science and all of it must be wrong. Nothing changes. Everything is as it is. As you see it, as you feel it, as it is. You don't have to reinvent anything to accept the flat earth. All you need to do is have a simple understanding that you don't need gravity. Things just fall because of density. Air isn't very dense. Something more dense than air will fall through it. And we don't float off, not because of lack of gravity, because we're more dense than air. We're less dense than, well, we're not that less dense than water. We're similar density. But if you relax in it, we've got enough buoyancy within our bodies to float. Density and buoyancy explains it all. What doesn't explain anything is how water can curve around a ball. That's where you start making up gravity. And that's where we say gravity doesn't exist. It's not because we don't think things don't fall. We know things fall. We just know things can't stick to the underneath of something. This table here, this beer here, the spinning bucket of water theory that people are bringing back in again. Something I've been talking about for the last 20 years, the spinning bucket. The spinning bucket proves a flat earth. You spin it around full of water. Take a video of it. Get some time lapse and see how it makes a full circle. And every single still picture you can take of it will show the water being flat and level inside the bucket. On the outside of your bucket, on the other hand, that's the equivalent of the outside of a spinning ball earth. And anything on the outside of that bucket is going to go spinning off, flying off into space. Pure and simple. Poke a hole in the bottom of the bucket and spin it around. Then you'll see the nature of water on a spinning ball earth, shooting out in a jet stream. So I've had it with pseudo flat earthers. The same thing happened with 9/11. Pseudo 9/11s. As soon as you non-intellectuals grab hold of something and then start trying to appear intellectual, you just fuck it up for everybody else. And then you make serious contributors to a cause. You set us back. You set us back because you're just immature. Yeah, I don't know, you get excited, you're like little children. You see somebody in a Starbucks who works for NASA, and all of a sudden, you're going to confront him after you've been given your little sticker, and then you think, I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to film myself confronting him, and you make yourself look like a fuckwit. You really do. Don't do that. If you are serious about wanting to talk to somebody from NASA, don't confront them in a Starbucks after you've had a polite conversation and he's given you his little sticker and you've worked yourself up and think you're going to make a name for yourself. Come on, get real. Invite the guy politely. Say, look, I'm really curious about what you're saying about astronauts in their spacesuits drowning. Do you mind if I interviewed you for a couple of minutes or sat down and chatted some more about it off the record? Then you could come back and tell your story at least. Otherwise, you just make yourself look like a fuckwit. You make all other flat earthers look like tinfoil hat brigaders that we can't control our emotions, that we're confrontationalists, that we're absolute nutters. And so all these serious scientists are just going to have to go and hide in their houses, never answer any calls, won't talk to any of us, won't even contemplate the theory because we're all fucking nutters. And I think that's about the end of this video. So, talk to you next time.